What's up, Amazon sellers? Today, I'm super excited to bring you this interview with someone that I've been following for a while, but my God, has been in the game for a serious amount of time. Chris Grant, aka Clear the Shelf. And I'm interested to learn what advice he can share for new sellers from having taught over 3,500 people through the OA Challenge. Stay tuned. I'm going to share all with you in a minute. Okay, so today I'm super excited to be here with Chris Grant and appreciate to have some time with him to obviously understand about what he's learned training over 3,500 people with the OA Challenge. Chris, thank you so much for spending some time out and obviously, sharing today. If anyone doesn't know who you are you happy just to tell us a little bit about who you are and a bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you. My name's Chris Grant. I run a blog called Clear the Shelf, and Clear the Shelf is my tag everywhere, Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. I've been selling on Amazon for over 10 years and eBay even longer. My eBay account just turned 18. And it's been a wild ride. When I got into Amazon, I tried to figure out as much as I could as quickly as possible. And it made all the mistakes along the way because education was a lot fewer and further between. Matter of fact, I can only name 2 people in this space back then who were really creating content. And I was fortunate enough to find them and befriend them and learn from them. And then once I kind of started to get my feet under me, I was like, you know what? I really do kind of enjoy just sharing what I'm learning, what I'm doing. And so that led to, doing a little bit of YouTube and helping out in Facebook groups. And then it turned into the OA Challenge and all the other things that we've created. So it's been a really fun ride.
Oh my God, you said 10 years on Amazon, but 18 on eBay. That's absolutely incredible. Quick question for you. You mentioned 2 people. Who are those 2 people who are the original people that you learned from?
So Chris Green he's the OG. I mean, first guy to I think the first guy to write a book about Amazon and uploaded it to Amazon. I think he's the first person to have a software. He was co-creator and he used to be the co-owner of something called ScanPower, which is a scanning app and inbound shipping tool and that kind of stuff. And now he's I consider him a really close friend. So I'm lucky there. And then I heard so are you familiar with Pat Flynn of the SPI podcast?
Heard the name.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's really, he's been an incredible affiliate marketer and blogger over the years, but he interviewed someone by the name of Jessica LaRue on his podcast years and years ago. And so I also checked out her information and learned a bit from her as well.
Wow, interesting. Thank you so much. My God, obviously, I've been in the game for 5 years. And obviously, you've been in the game 10. It's wow, who was in the game before that? We're going back through some history. So obviously, thank you for that. Question for you, where are you now? What does life look like for you now? Are you still selling? Are you teaching? What's the situation?
Yeah, so we do still sell. And like I tell everybody, I try to be open and honest. I don't share sales figures, but my sales on Amazon pay for all the bills. But selling on Amazon is fun, and you get that dopamine hit when you find a product. However, I've found even bigger dopamine hits with helping other people. And I don't know, it's almost cliche, but 2022 was the first year that someone sent me a photo and it was their kid walking. And they're like, hey, I just want to say thank you. I was at home to capture this moment because I no longer have a job. I turned in my notice. I'm at home. I'm selling on Amazon full time. And while I knew why I was doing it beforehand, that really kind of set it in concrete for me. This is why I help other people learn how to sell on Amazon or learn how to do OA. That was probably one of the best feelings, and it just made it very concrete that this is probably what I'm going to do for the next decade.
It's interesting. And I think, just to people out there, there are people out there who are really money driven, who want that. And there are other people out there who are hey, as long as I can get my bills covered, I'm really happy with that. I want to have a different way of life. That's the one thing I love about networking and meeting with people. You meet so many people with different points of views. And I certainly know what you mean. I've had those people where they're Tom, I've quit my job. I just want to say thank you. I'm cool. It's really nice. That's and that's nicer than watching the source or you see the charts or whatever. You're this guy, can I take you out for a pint or a beer? You're no problem.
Right.
Come meet you. Yeah, I love that. So fantastic. So obviously right now you are selling, but obviously you're teaching. And can I ask a question for you? What percentage of your time is spent selling and what's percentage of time is spent teaching? How does that look like?
Oh, I'd say 20% of my time is spent selling. Amazon's it's simple. It's not easy, but Buy low, sell high. It's a really fairly simple process. Now, of course, Amazon likes to throw roadblocks and there are difficult parts to the business, but you kind of figure that out over time. And so I'd say 20% is spent on selling. The other 80% is spent teaching, creating software, coming up with new ideas. I try to have a fair amount of thinking time so that I can make sure to come up with new ideas. Like how do we use ChatGPT for online arbitrage, or making sure you're staying abreast of all the changes that are happening. Keepa released a new feature just this morning, and so you got to make sure to stay up on all of that, and then supporting the people who are in my groups and stuff like that. So because that's where I think I actually get some energy, I end up spending a lot more time doing that.
Interesting. My God. Well, I would love to obviously learn more about the OA challenge. I want to come on to that in a moment. But you talked about software there. So tell me about the software. Like, what is it? What does it do? And why did you create it?
I've actually created probably 7 or 8 different pieces of software. My very first one was something called Rev ROI, and that was a simple Chrome extension that allows you to go out and find the best discounted gift cards and cashback sources. That was the first thing I created. After that did well, we created a few others. I've created some off of Amazon, like Easy Blur. It allows you to just kind of drag your mouse and blur parts of Google Chrome while you're creating videos, so you don't have to do it in post. Then we created IP Alert, and that was kind of the thing that really struck a chord in the Amazon community. And it was actually just based off of a blog post that a buddy of mine wrote. So my buddy Nate McAllister, he runs EntreResource.com, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to write a blog post about all the brands that are filing IP complaints, because 2 or 3 years ago, that's kind of when it all started. Before that, it wasn't such a huge deal. And so he writes this blog post, I read it, and I'm like, dude, we've got to turn this into something proactive rather than just a list. And so we created IP Alert, and people want to be protected. They don't want to get IP claims and not have to deal with those things. And so it did really well. And so I do spend a fair amount of time making sure that stays updated and the database is clean and things like that.
Oh my God, and I've used IP Alert. Thank you so much. It's a great tool, and it's really interesting because I remember when I first started, IP complaints were like, if you get one, you're going to get shut down. It was literally like the IP complaint of death. Now the game's changed. It's not so bad. Amazon a lot better, but still there's a lot more of them coming out. You've got to be very careful of it as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for that. So obviously, the one question I really wanted to ask you about was around the OA challenge. I think you said to me is off camera, you've done about 3,500 people you supported out. If anyone doesn't know what the OA challenge is, can you tell a little bit about it? What is it, how it came around, and what's the objective?
There is no shortage of courses about Amazon. We all know that. And I see, I see it lately on Twitter, they're really going at it about courses and things. And I've created courses other than the OA challenge, like Tactical Arbitrage Academy, Keepa Academy. And those are your typical, here's a bunch of videos, go out and enjoy. The problem is if you have access to a back end of course statistics, you realize how little people actually take courses when they buy them. I'm not calling anybody out because if you look at my snoozed folder in my Gmail, I've got 15, 20 courses that I have the intention of taking, but they're just collecting digital dust right now. So we wanted to offer something different, and we thought, well, why not a challenge format where people actually go through a process with us and we do it live, and we found that it works much better. People show up at a much higher rate. People are able to get questions asked in a live format so that they can go away knowing what they need to know. And we have built it so that every day kind of builds on top of the next, so that at the end, hopefully you're kind of a dangerous online arbitrage sourcing machine. And we've found that it's really, really worked. People really like it. And, I tell people, hey, we're going to be here for 90 minutes every day for 14 days straight. And people will stay for 2.5 hours because the format just seems to work.
Wow. It's interesting. Obviously I have some courses and I do look at the back of house course data and I really understand what you're saying. There's a really interesting thing that I kind of listened to. I think it was so many people ask you for the answers that when you give it to them, they don't do it. And I think that's kind of very relevant in regards to the course side. And what I kind of read in between that is it isn't just about getting the answers, it's about how we learn them and the process we go through that. And I love how you said you change that into a challenge. You don't, you don't for 14 days. You can drop in, you do the 90 minutes, and then you can have your questions answered. And the format seems to be working. And the one thing I really say is like people learn in different ways. Some people want a book, some people want an audio, some people want a challenge, some people want the TikTok 60-second version. There are different ways to learn. So you've been running this how long now?
I think this is our third year. I think we started in 2020 or 2021. I always forget. But we just did our 9th cohort.
Wow. And how can I ask you, how often do you run them?
It varies, but I would say typically it's around once a quarter. I know last year we skipped Q4, so we only did 3 of them. This year we'll probably make sure to get a full 4 of them in for the whole year.
Yeah. No, hey, massive respect to you, because going live every day for 14 days straight is a lot out on your own personal time and commitment.
It is. That. And a big, my family really deserves a pat on the back for, letting dad go and, work for 3 hours every single night for 14 days. It can become a little tiring for them.
Wow. So obviously you've done this for 3,500 people as well. Is that about right?
Yeah. We've had, I think we've tipped over the 3,500 people who've come through.
Question for you: if someone is looking to start right now, what advice do you have for them? What have you let's go through some fundamentals, and let's go through some more kind of advanced stuff. What would you say there?
So I think the very first thing people need to do is you first need to understand exactly what arbitrage really is, and it really is as simple as buy low, sell high. We're not doing anything different than what a wholesale distributor does, what Target does, what Walmart does. It's just Amazon has empowered essentially every single person who really wants to and who has a pulse to become, a small Target or Walmart on their platform. And the reason that it works is because there are always discrepancies in the market. There's always some sort of arbitrage that will happen in every market, and it's been around forever. I like to tell people that it's probably the second oldest profession. And
I'm not going to ask you the first one.
yeah, everybody knows. But buying things from Target and Walmart and Walgreens and flipping them on Amazon for a higher price is essentially what we're going to be doing. And then after that, you need to learn the rules of Amazon. You kind of need to know the rules of the road to make sure you're not going to get yourself in trouble, or at least you need to kind of have a 10,000 foot view of them. And then you should probably learn a little bit about Keepa to make sure that you can make a wise purchasing decision. And then after that, I tell people, really, you just need to pay some Amazon tuition in the form of inventory. Now, whether that's 1 unit or 1,000 units, that's going to be up to you and how comfortable you are and how much capital you might have available. But there's no wrong way to do it as long as you are kind of putting one foot in front of the other and learning the process.
I completely agree. It's funny, people are like, what is Amazon? What is arbitrage? It's complex. You're like, no, you just buy stuff, you sell it. And they're like, oh, but arbitrage is different to wholesale. You're like, I kind of get it. The only difference is how you source product. It's your supply chain. It's very, very similar. I like what you said about know the rules, 10,000 foot. Amazon's not complex, and if you just think about if you're trying to do right by the customer and follow that guide, you're probably going to be fine. It's when you're trying to do things a bit black hat or a bit kind of gray, then you're like, maybe I need to delve into the detail of this. But buy stuff, sell it, legitimate stuff, new stuff, and sell it, fine. Absolutely no problem there. I love the fact you talk about Keepa as well. And then I love the one thing I do just love there is you said get an education through buying, learning stock. And I think that's a really important part. Do you have many people who are watching, I've watched all the YouTube videos, I know it, and then they're like, but it's not working, or it's impossible. Do you ever meet those people?
Oh, sure. There are some folks who are content consumers, forever. And, oh, okay, well, I understand this and I understand that, but, I'm just not sure it's really going to work. And I'm like, well, okay, how much have you spent in inventory? Well, I haven't done that yet. And that happens. I get it. It's easy to say I want to have a business. It's a lot more scary when it's time for the rubber to meet the road and for you to actually spend some of your hard-earned money on product that you might lose money on. That is difficult for loads of people. And the crazy thing about all business, not just Amazon, but all businesses, entrepreneurs are always working in kind of an unknown territory. You don't know what's around the corner. You can't say for sure what's going to happen next week. Amazon can come and say, hey, you know what? We're going to shut down the marketplace. Thanks for being here. Thanks for playing, but we're going to take it over. But that's the way it is in any business. And it's the same way in a job. You never know. I mean, some CEO could say, oh, we're shutting down, and there goes your job. So if you can realize that you can be comfortable being uncomfortable, then the game gets a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I find that fascinating. The one thing I think about is like, I'm sure the question you always hear is like, is Amazon saturated? When you come back to the point about, there's a lot of people with accounts, a lot of people who might just start, but actually continue the process. A lot of people give up.
Yep.
And so, and by the way, and I think the other one that I realized the other day, not realized, I talked about, like, people talk about mastery, like 10,000 hour rule. And I'm sure you heard that as well. Someone said, like, it isn't 10,000 hours, it's 10,000 iterations. It's 10,000 times of trying and failing or finding out what works. And that's the difference between getting started, watching videos, to actually, like, now I get this. Now is, you're Chris, I haven't got a job. I've got, it's a 20% of my time a week spent on this business that pays the bill, and I get to enjoy what I love doing. Because we test it, we try it, we do it. And I think that's a really important consideration. And like a lot of people don't.
So one point that you brought up there about how a bunch of people try and then give up, so there are some numbers behind that. There's about 6 million people selling on Amazon. That's what we think. Okay. It's according to like Marketplace Pulse and stuff like that. Out of those 6 million accounts, only 2 million of those are actually active. A little fewer than that actually have anything up for sale on Amazon. So, a lot of people will throw out that term, well, there's 6 million people selling on Amazon. Well, one, that's worldwide. It's not just in the US. And out of all those 6 million people, only 2 million are actually still active on the platform. While that does seem like a pretty big number, compared to the number of buyers on Amazon, that number is actually fairly small. Amazon US, I think they got, I don't know, it's a huge number. It's billions of page hits every single month. And Amazon sellers, we sell 7,000 items per minute on Amazon. Not us personally, but together as a group. And so
you do well in your 20% a week,
right? There really is still room on Amazon. Another thing, I actually posted a Twitter thread about this the other week. People are like, oh, well, everything's tanking because of all these sellers. But if we go and actually look at everything ranked under 500,000 on Amazon, without Amazon actually selling, there's over 1 million ASINs where the price has actually gone up over the past 90 days. And so there are still tons of room to be had for Amazon sellers. And there's always new things being created for us to be able to sell. For example, did you hear about pickleball less than a year ago? Yeah, I mean, nobody knew what it was, even though it's been around since the 60s. And now it's actually one of the fastest selling little niches on Amazon because everybody's into pickleball. So what will the next thing be?
That million, that's an interesting one. You talked about like the prices have gone up. I think the one that I can relate to is I've been selling now for 5 years and I've had VAs for 3. And I say it to my manager. I'm like, for the last 3 years, I've always heard it's really hard and it's getting harder to find deals. It's been a tough week. And I'm like, for some weird reason, we're now bigger than we've ever been. Like the sentiment doesn't match the reality. Mm-hmm. It's like, if the sentiment was correct, we should be a small business that's not working and it's failing, but for some reason we've grown. And you see this, like if you watch people in the game, they're growing, everyone's growing. And I think the saying, what is it, like a rising tide lifts all boats. Amazon's booming, COVID increased online purchases, and it's there's so much opportunity out there. It's incredible. Yeah. And then even if the opportunity the size of the ocean didn't change, but even with the likes of social media, where you're now getting this like new niche that you talked about, pickle pop or something, I'm not sure.
Pickleball.
But pickleball, but then it's really interesting. Like, wow, this is a new opportunity to buy it, and it's a dynamic marketplace. And if you're willing to adapt to that, you can do really, really well.
Exactly. And you're right about rising tide lifting all boats. Online retail sales just hit $1 trillion for the first time. in 2022. It's a massive number, and Amazon takes about 40% of that or so, maybe 45% of that, which we get to share with them, and then Amazon sellers get about 60% of what Amazon sells in total, gross merchandise volume anyway. There really is, and there's room to grow. And the reason I say that is we're just now getting to the point where online e-commerce is about 20 to 21% of total retail sales in the US anyway. And we kind of see this weird thing happen. Every time a particular vertical hits about 21%, we tend to see a little bit more hockey stick growth because you just kind of hit that tipping point. And so even though COVID advanced us and, lockdowns and all that, it was really good for e-commerce, I actually think the best days are ahead of us because I think we're going to see even more adoption of being comfortable buying online. Social commerce is becoming much bigger with TikTok, and of course, we see other platforms try to adopt that kind of strategy, but a lot of that funnels right back into Amazon, which is going to be good for us in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And obviously, I'd like to delve into that more, the future of Amazon. But before we do, I would like to come back to OA Challenge. I'd like to come back to, you talked about what advice do you have for new sellers? Let me ask you a question, what things should people be careful about? What should they not do? What should they avoid? Maybe some common misconceptions. Maybe there's something that you see quite common happening in the last year or two that look, just be careful around this area. Is there anything you can advise on that?
So I think one of the most important things is to make sure you're vetting your sources. For example, I'm happy to buy from Walmart and sell on Amazon. However, Walmart is growing their third-party marketplace, and I need to be sure to never buy from a third-party seller on Walmart. The reason being is that, let's say Jim's Bait and Tackle over on Walmart is selling a product. I can't know where they're sourcing it from. Are they buying it from AliExpress, or are they getting it from Walmart and reselling it on Walmart? Are they buying it from Amazon? And that can become a problem if you get an inauthentic claim, if you get an IP claim. Amazon may not accept those kinds of invoices. Same goes for eBay or Bonanza or any other place that has a marketplace. You got to be really, really careful with that. And I see a lot more people sourcing from those kinds of places, and it's going to end up not being a good time for them. So make sure you can prove provenance of your items. The other thing is we want to make sure that things match. I'll have people ask me, hey, I see this as a 6-pack and it's 18 ounces on Amazon. Well, I can get 6 of them, but they're 19 ounces. Is that okay? I'm like, listen, a customer's probably not going to be upset that they get an extra ounce. I said, but someone is, and you don't want to have to deal with that kind of person. So I think those are really kind of the two biggest things that I see from newer sellers.
No, I really agree. I've had that so many times. They're but can I not just do this? And I'm like, you're probably going to be fine. But when that one customer complains and Amazon looks at your stock and realizes they're not, then that's going to be a big red flag because you haven't been trustworthy to sell the same products. And Amazon, I think that's one of their big things is the listing has to match, or the product has to match the listing. Yeah, that's a fundamental part. If I buy an 18-ounce product, I want an 18-ounce product. And it could be the case that I actually want only 18 ounces, not more. And obviously, I might be that annoying customer who says, how dare you send me 1 ounce too much? Fantastic. So honestly, thank you so much. And I think that's really good. And that's a really interesting point, because I remember when I first started, we talked about buying from eBay onto Amazon. And then there's the whole issue around, I remember in the UK, there was a whole issue around their third-party sellers. And there were a few eBay sellers, which were basically the outlets for the big brands, which you could get, Amazon were, they weren't officially okay with, but they would accept the invoices, if it makes sense, because they didn't really look very eBay. Sure. So it's a dangerous game. But obviously now with the rise of Walmart doing its third-party sellers, we have to be careful with that. And I think I remember, one of the common questions is you can't sell on Amazon, it's illegal to resell stuff. And it's just supply chain. Amazon's going to accept, generally, not always, can't guarantee it might change. We've seen that Amazon's accepted a Walmart invoice from Walmart, but if it says third-party seller, then you're likely to have a big red flag on your account, and that could be a worry. So I go after the whole thing, which is if it seems too good to be true, it generally is. Be very careful. That's what you get, don't you? So, question for you, future of Amazon. You talked a bit about, I'm going to quote you here, you talked about Amazon could come along tomorrow and shut down the third-party fulfillment. Please don't scare me. Please don't scare me. You also talked about how it's reached 1 trillion in sales, and also as well, we talked about boats rising all tides. What do you think? What do you think the future of Amazon is?
I think that the future of Amazon and e-commerce in general is pretty bright. Heck, come on. Do you really want to go to Target, or do you want to sit down and watch Netflix and just order products from your phone? I mean, it's fair. It's kind of a no-brainer. All right. So I see e-commerce growing more and more. And of course, that's going to make Amazon grow more and more because they are currently the market leader. I also think that Amazon knows that other people want to try to eat their lunch. Walmart in particular. Walmart is doing what I think is a pretty good job in growing their third-party marketplace. I've gotten multiple emails from them asking me to come over and join, which I haven't taken them up on yet, but I probably should. And I think they're going to work on whatever they can to make sure that they stay ahead of Walmart. At least that's what I would do. And we see that in, like right now, Amazon is trying to consolidate. They're trying to save money. They're trying to become a little bit leaner and kind of harken back to those, day one on Amazon. It's always day one at Amazon, as they like to say. And so I think that they will continue to grow for probably at least another decade. And we see them actively trying to do this and tie the customer closer to the Amazon ecosphere. We see it with them buying NFL streaming rights. We see it with them bringing out really good original programming. They just started RX Pass, where you can get like $5 medications from Amazon delivered directly to you. Amazon is trying to grow their sphere of influence, and it really all ties all back to them wanting to bring the consumer back to the platform to buy everything that they need. And I think Amazon's done a great job at it. I think they'll continue to do a great job at it. And I don't see Walmart. I mean, they tried with Vudu and they failed, the video side. I don't see them doing it with medication or anything like that quite yet on the e-commerce side. But they have their own advantages. They've got all the retail storefronts that they could leverage for their third-party marketplace. So it's an interesting time to be an e-commerce seller because there are so many changes. There are these big companies that are fighting for a slice of the pie, and typically competition brings about good things. So I would imagine that we'll be the beneficiaries of those good things as they come down the road.
Let me ask you a question from an external perspective, outside of us as sellers. You look at Amazon, they're a big player. Walmart, obviously a very big player. From someone who's maybe not a seller right now or maybe considering it, I might be looking at this whole equation going, well, look, I see Amazon as big, I see Walmart as big, but why the hell do they care about me as a little seller? What would you say to that? And going forward, why do they care about me?
It's really all about the long tail, in my opinion. So Amazon first party and Walmart first party, they can only supply so many things.
What does first party mean? I know, but what does it to anyone else?
So first party would be Amazon selling themselves and Walmart selling the products themselves. Let's say up until Walmart acquired Jet.com. Their e-commerce strategy was garbage. And their real strategy was brick and mortar. And at a brick and mortar location, the company sells everything first party, which means they've got to buy it and they've got to stock it, they've got to ship it around the country, and then finally they can realize a profit once it sells. Amazon and Walmart, they've got a ton of leverage. I'm sure that they are doing 90-day net terms or maybe even longer with some of the companies that they deal with. They've also got a ton of cash that they can throw around. Amazon just took a little $1 billion loan the other week, and they have the ability to do those kind of things, but still they can only provide so many items to the marketplace. And so they actually need us to fill in the gaps. Maybe you're someone who makes a handmade product. Maybe you are someone who shops all of the mom and pop Ace Hardwares that are out in the middle of nowhere in the US, and you find these products that are no longer being made, or you're finding these products that people want that Amazon can't seem to get for one reason or another. Here's a great example. There are certain people who really love the brand Kirkland. Kirkland is from Costco. Maybe, out in the middle of the country, there's a ton of people who don't have a Costco nearby, but they really want that fish oil from Kirkland's. Well, someone needs to provide that, and Costco is not going to sell wholesale to Amazon. However, they can't stop you or I from walking into the store, clearing out a shelf, and sending it to Amazon to be able to sold to a third-party customer. And that's where we are important.
I like that, but I'm going to challenge it.
Okay.
I know the answer, but I think it's a really good point. If I'm a non-seller right now and I'm going to sit there and go, I understand what you're saying, Amazon need us, but my God, Amazon's this big company, so is Walmart. They can just start filling in these gaps themselves. Why do they need us?
So the last time I checked Keepa, in the U.S. marketplace, there are 980 billion listings on the Amazon marketplace.
Oh, God.
One company just cannot fill all of those needs. Now, we could then argue, okay, well, there's 980 billion listings on Amazon US, all right? But, a ton of those are not going to sell or don't sell at all. Absolutely. Let's just say that 25% of them sell. So we're right around 225 billion listings. Amazon can't provide all of those. It's impossible for one company, no matter how big they are, to be able to source that much product. And so it falls to us as the reseller, to supply the regional brands that maybe Amazon and their buyers haven't heard about, to supply the private label products that Amazon hasn't thought about yet, to follow the trends and the emerging products like pickleball. Who at Amazon is like, oh yeah, I know this sport from the 1960s, and it seems to be up and coming. Let's go ahead and make sure that we have an Amazon Basics version of a pickleball paddle. They don't have the ability to do that, and so it falls on the entrepreneur and the people who are out in the trenches with their hands in the dirt to figure out what should be supplied to Amazon.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll ask you one more question in a minute, but I will just add that if anyone wants to know, if you look at third-party revenues in Amazon, it's actually increasing every year as a percentage of total revenue. So my kind of argument behind the question I just asked is like, surely third-party sellers should get smaller and smaller because Amazon's filling the gaps. Well, actually, it's not. The boat's getting bigger, but the percentage of the boat by third-party sellers is increasing as well, which I think is incredible.
It is. And if we take that a step further, it's genius on Amazon's part, because what they get to do is they get to be the Uber, the Airbnb, they get to sell things without owning it. And they get to take a commission because they own the marketplace. So why spend, $200-300 billion up front to buy inventory when they could spend half of that to build out the logistic channel and then allow 1 million entrepreneurs to go in and fill those warehouses for them? They take a cut and we make the rest.
It's really and it's genius because obviously they create the environment which facilitates us. And what we do is we use, we're basically buyers who are holding a lot of the risk, but also as well, we reap the rewards when we get it right. And they don't have to worry about managing us. They just have systems that do it. So it's fascinating. Question for you, final question I want to ask is, there was I think it's something like, monopolies. They talked about Amazon's too big. Let me ask you the question. If the government were to come in tomorrow and say, look, Amazon, you're too big. Either you sell yourself or you have third-party sellers. Which way do you think it would go and why?
That's a good question. The Amazon seller in me wants to say that Amazon would favor the marketplace over their own first-party sales. And that's not just blind hope on my part. I think that it would make more sense for them because they know that there are big sellers who could probably fill in the gaps that they have to give up. There's Spreetail and PharmaPax is gone, but there are other sellers who are of similar or larger size who could easily go out and take up that market share that Amazon has to lose. And then Amazon gets to say, okay, well, that's fine. They get that, but we're going to go ahead and take our 35% off the top and we'll be okay. So they would actually have less risk, because they don't have to worry about spoiling inventory or anything like that. They would allow third-party sellers to take on all that risk, and they still get the commission. That's the way that I think it would go. Maybe they split it off into two different marketplaces. Maybe there's an AmazonBasics.com and an AmazonThirdParty.com, but that seems a little less likely.
Yeah, I agree. I would probably agree the same thing as well. Like, I think it would go that way, but hey, we'll never know. But I think also as well, like, the idea is that people go to Amazon because you can just get everything there. And that's part of the long tail you talked about. So like that just makes it easy, and there's a competitive advantage to that. And if you lost that long tail, that everything, and it went to Walmart, for example, you'd start losing a lot of traffic because all the little things that people want to buy would become a problem. So but I think there's arguments both sides. So thank you so much. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do it?
Well, I'll tell you what, right now I'm really trying to grow Twitter. I really love the platform. It seems very smart. It's also short, and a lot of people have really great takes. So twitter.com/clear the shelf would be the best place right now.
Fantastic. And if anyone wants to know, I will drop a link down below, so obviously check that out and you can see it as well. Chris, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, and obviously I'm looking forward to catching up with you in person soon. I know we're going to be meeting soon, but thank you so much, and hopefully I can get you back in like a year's time and you can share, and maybe we can see what's going on with Amazon and the future of it, and see if the rising tide has lifted all boats as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.